Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Snow the Goalie, and we're going to get right to it. Quick episode this week. When I say quick, it's probably going to be like 30 or 45. Hell, the way that we go, it might even go an hour, but we're going to say it's a quick episode this week. Happy New Year to everybody out there who listens on the podcast feed, who watches over on the Crossing Broad YouTube channel. Hope that you and yours had an excellent New Year's Eve, a great New Year's Day. We're going to get right into it because there's a lot that is going on, not only with the team, some things that are going on at the arena, but then also one of our very own was out, I don't know, shaking hands, kissing babies at 90s night. And that, of course, is a man who's not in his car, who I believe is holding a small canine, and that is none other than our good friend Bundy, Chris Terrian. Follow him on Twitter at CTerrian6. How are you doing, you beaut?
I'm doing great, hanging out with my little man Cash right here. And he just comes up for a little view. He's a little shih tzu poodle, and he's my man. So he comes in and he's joined the podcast. He doesn't even realize how famous he is yet. I had a blast last night down at the game. You know what, guys? Listen, I can't believe it's, about a year and a half since I started, and it wasn't smooth. It wasn't smooth. Things had happened. And listen, it's still a work in progress, but man, I had a blast last night. Just being around Flyers fans, being on the concourse, the season ticket lounge, meeting people in some of the suites. It was just great to be back in the building like I used to be for a night, shaking hands and just sharing some stories. A lot of talk about Snow the Goalie from a lot of the fans, which I found really cool. A lot of, people saying, reminiscing about the 90s. It was 90 night last night. And I had a great time down there. And you know what, guys, for the first time, and I'll say in a while, and I know this team's not going to be a Stanley Cup night juggernaut, no playoffs in sight, but a 4-game win streak and an incredible Thursday night at the building against the Arizona Coyotes, who are not, the budding Colorado Avalanche or Vegas Golden Knights where you get good superstar talent coming in. It was a great night in South Philly last night. It really gave me a little bit of a trip back in time to the Flyers of what they were, but also more so important, and I know how important it is to you, Anthony, a trip of what will be again. What will be again with a good team, because the fans in this town do care. They're pissed off. Yes, they're disappointed in a lot of what they've seen, but I also think they see that there could be a silver lining somewhere. But where my silver lining is I've always said the fans are the beating heart of this entire organization. They always have been. Ed Snyder knew that, and happy 90th birthday today, which would be his heavenly birthday. He always knew that, and he used to say, "My fans are the most important people to me." And when I saw that last night at that game with about 15,000, I think we guessed, Anthony, before, in terms of real butts and seats, I was really optimistic that what was Philadelphia hockey will always be Philadelphia Flyer hockey. And, man, I was pretty excited about it. And it's a positive Bundy today, right? Like, I love it. And I just referred to myself in the third. But anyway, that's where I'm at today.
We're off to a hell of a start here.
That's great start, boys. Man, I love everybody today.
Positivity going. Happy New Year once again. Anthony Sanfilippo, find him on Twitter at AnSanPhilly. How are you? Keep the positivity going, fella.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to keep the positivity going. It was Bundy's right. It was a good experience down there last night. I mean, teams winning. Can't say much about the Coyotes. That's a terrible, terrible hockey team. But man, but yeah, no, it's good stuff. Some entertainment afterwards, which we're going to talk about. Discussing the Flyers lone all-star. Well, they can get a second, but it's improbable, I would say, at this point. And the coach's reaction to it. But I mean, look, there's some good things happening with the team on the ice. And Bundy's right, to get 15,000 people down into the barn, the first home game after the holiday against a bad Western Conference opponent, it says a lot. I mean, it really does about the fans. It does say a lot about the fans that they're willing to come down for that. And they were treated to a good effort by the team. Yeah. So maybe there's a little bit of momentum for the future. I mean, you get to see a lot. The one thing I wanted to say is this, and I know that this is a little bit skewed, but I believe that, and it's the last, they said this last 8 games, I think it is, the Flyers have more points scored by players aged 23 and under than any team in the NHL. Now, if you're a good team, you're probably not playing a lot of 23 and under guys. So you do have to take that with a grain of salt a little bit. But it does also say that there are veterans on this team, and that's who's contributing is the 23 and under players are the ones that are really contributing right now. So yeah, that's good. It's all good stuff for the Flyers in that regard. The negative.
Don't you dare, because I had a positive thing. I wanted to throw a positive thing.
You throw one more positive thing, but there is a negative. There is a negative.
So I'm actually going to turn a negative into a positive because I think it's important. And I know that usually the way that this show works, we get to the very end, right as we're about to sign off for the day. You go, well, hey Russ, got some 5-star reviews in the pop. Gotta read some 5-star reviews. And the good thing is that some of the more critical, I guess we'll say, listeners to the show for a while, they just had a hard time with listening comprehension. And when we would say, if you want to be critical, you can be critical and live your best life, but it has to be a 5-star review. If you leave 1 star, 2, 3, 4, we're not reading it, but a 5-star, we'll read it, even if it's negative. So we got this week, but there's one that I really wanted to get out of the way here because it's actually indicative of the fact that things are a changing. Things have been a changing. And I want to read this one because we had two that I think kind of go together. One was from Tucker 1898, who said, "Boo, you guys are really full of yourselves and it's absolutely pathetic." And that is totally fair. Anthony is 100% full of himself. Bundy and I try every week to stop him from being such an egotist. But that's that is what it is. There's only so much we can do. But this one is the one that I love. And this is where I want to take the positive, Amp. This one's from Duntree. First time listening, enjoyed the content. People were difficult to like personally. Feel like they're taking credit for the culture change upcoming for the Flyers. Full of themselves, truly. Get to hockey talk, not to what you've accomplished. Nothing. Gents, I want to point your attention really quickly, and I think that you know where this is going to go. I want to point your attention to something that came out on Twitter today. Of course, as Bundy mentioned, today happens to be the birthday, what would have been the 90th birthday of Ed Snider. And as you can see here, if you're watching on the Crossing Broad YouTube feed, the Philadelphia Flyers acknowledged that on Twitter this year. They did not do that last year, and Anthony and I took them to task. Bundy, I don't remember if you were on for that episode, but last year
I was here. Yeah, I was around. I don't remember talking, but yeah.
We took the organization to task over this. Became a big thing. And then we heard from people in the organization last year who are like, you're blowing this out of proportion. Like, why would we do that? The team wasn't playing, yada, yada, yada. And here it is, January 6th, Philadelphia Flyers acknowledging Ed Snider's birthday, what would have been his 90th birthday. And look, there's even some positive here in the comments, okay? Well, the second one's actually very negative, but the first one's good. He's sending his love right back, a Flyer forever. We're going to keep the positivity
that's from his daughter.
There are some people who are not exactly the most complimentary of current ownership and front office, but the fact remains, there are changes that have been happening. Now, do I say that we are solely responsible for it? Yes. I mean, no, of course not. But could we have some influence? Maybe there's just a little bit. Anyway, that's a positive. There was another thing. The 4-game win streak, or the winning that this team has done, can be viewed as a negative. I certainly have a hard time loving it. But what you're starting to see, and this is one thing that I think we definitely need to dive into here, is you're seeing young guys continue to take a step forward. And we said that if this team was going to do anything of value this year, independent of their outcome, independent of how the games turn out, we need to see steps forward. And it's happening with younger players like friend of the show now, Owen Tippett. We've seen Morgan Frost have another strong game against Arizona. If only he could play against Arizona every night. But there do appear to be strides being taken. And Anthony, I read your story over on Crossing Broad. I wanted to see, from your perspective, who's really standing out to you right now in terms of the young core, or what could be a young core, I guess I should say.
Well, I think the guys that really stand out to me with the way they play night in and night out. Noah Cates for one. Again, he's not going to be a top end guy, but Torts is playing him as a top line center, and he's doing a heck of a good job. I mean, he's not scoring a ton of goals. He's not putting up a ton of points. That's not what he's going to be, but he's a heck of a two-way player, and he buys in. I think he's part of this. I think Owen Tippett has been impressive of late. He's got 10 points in his last 11 games, 5 goals, 5 assists. But you see him kind of taking his game to up a level. He got off to a good start, then he kind of dipped a bit, and I kind of felt like he was on that precipice of maybe getting benched. And then all of a sudden, he turned the game back around, and he plays very fast. He's a hell of a skater. Made a great pass. I know the game was out of reach at this point last night. It was the 6th goal, but makes a hell of a pass. Comes down the wing, skates behind the net, and finds JVR in front with a really pretty pass for the 6th goal. So I definitely think he's one of those guys. And Cam York is really doing a nice job getting the rush going, getting the puck out of his own end. He's another one who's even putting up points. He's got 7 assists in his last 8 games.
You know what's funny with him, Anthony? I just want to point, just while we're on Cam York, sorry for jumping in here. He's actually simplified his game, and it's looked like he's doing more. Before, he's trying to bring all that junior crap and the spinorama stuff and getting in trouble. He's really simplified the breakout pass and what he's doing. He's not going to be a Drew Doughty. He's not that guy.
No.
But he can be an efficient puck-moving defenseman and do it well on a nightly basis.
Well, it's funny because a few episodes back, when we were first talking about him, when he was first called back up, we were talking about him. Could he be a potential Dan Boyle? And then Torts brought up Dan Boyle in conference. Like, it was like, I couldn't believe that I was like, we just said this on Snow the Goalie. Torts brought up Dan Boyle as a comparison a couple games ago. I think he was talking about, or a couple practices ago, was talking about that he feels like he could potentially get to that point and be that kind of player where you're not always going to do the right thing in your own end. You're not always going to be the best defensive defenseman, but you're going to be really good on breakouts, and you're going to provide enough offense to make, the couple mistakes that you make, more palatable. And so that's who he compared him to. Look, if Cam York turns into Dan Boyle, it's a win.
Good player.
It's a win. That's a player. Yeah. It's a good player in this league, right? So I think those are the guys. I'll give you one more, Russ.
Yeah,
because I think it'll lead
on Cam York really quick. Because remember, at the beginning of the year, I got on my stump about, I think it's nonsense again that we have, the veteran coach sends the kid down, yada yada yada. What the hell's he doing? The A, all that. Whether or not it worked, whether or not it paid immediate dividends, I think is a little bit of a different conversation. But Bundy's point, by simplifying his game and by clearly believing that his coach isn't going to have a quick hook for him, which I do think is really, really critical to point out here, which might be different from training camp and preseason. It all looks like it's kind of clicked. And it would appear that barring some kind of, I don't know, trade deadline acquisition, some kind of cataclysmic set of events, he should be up for the rest of the year. It would at least appear as though he's kind of established himself. All right, go ahead. Well, I think you had another one.
I have one more to kind of throw at you because I think it kind of leads to another conversation and maybe transitions us to a different part of this team right now. How about that Sam Ersson? There's a lot of people down there who believed that he was the best goalie in training camp. I've been hearing it since September, that he came into camp and looked better than even Carter Hart. Now, I don't want to sit here and create a goalie controversy. It's not what I'm trying to do, because Carter Hart is the number one goalie for the Flyers, deserves to be the number one goalie for the Flyers, and will be the number one goalie for the Flyers at least through the rest of the season, right? So, but what I want to point out with Ersson is now he's got an opportunity, gets the call up, and he's gotten a chance. And look, he's played four starts, 3 games against bad teams. Stop. I did not say that. I did not say that. Did not. I did not say that. No.
We're listening on podcast. You just hear the random Bundy laugh.
I can't believe he just said that, Russ.
Yeah, I know. Listen, who am I to say? But for those who are listening who aren't watching on YouTube, Sanfilippo, Ersson better than Hart. You heard it here first on Snow the Goalie.
No,
Anthony out here just shooting. I mean,
no. But what I will say this about this kid, they like him enough that I believe he's going to be on the roster for the remainder of the season, and he's going to get 15 or so starts, and they really want to see. They want to see what he is, because there's a quiet belief that that he will develop into a number one in the NHL. And if he does, if he gives you 15 relatively good starts here for the rest of the season, while Carter Hart's playing most of the others, I would venture to say that you go into the offseason saying, we have two potential number one goalies here. Maybe we can do something and get something for one of them. So he's another player that I think is a good young player that may be part of this core long term.
There is an interesting mechanism thing that we probably should also talk about, which is the Felix Sandstrom of it all. There was a legitimate concern that they could lose him through waivers and that the Flyers could ask him to take a conditioning assignment. Now, keep in mind
which he agreed to do.
Which he didn't have to do. Right. To be clear, he did not need to accept it. He would have ended up getting placed on waivers, could have been claimed. But because he accepted the conditioning assignment, which was actually there are a couple of things here that are encouraging about that. One, I would assume that he can kind of see the writing on the wall at this point, that Ersson's going to be here and that Carter Hart obviously is the number one. He very easily could have kind of thrown things into chaos in a sense, and maybe even benefited. Maybe he gets picked up by another organization or by, a better team, or a team that he has a chance to start on. And it appears as though he's number 3 right now on the organizational depth chart in terms of who we could see right now. So kudos to him for taking the assignment. It did create an interesting situation, Ant, because if he hadn't accepted it, he does go on waivers, and all of a sudden, while it's great that it looks like you could potentially have 2 strong netminders at the NHL level who are both young, you could have lost some of that organizational depth for absolutely nothing.
Some. I mean, they're at a situation right now where they don't have a third goalie if somebody gets hurt that is NHL caliber. They just don't. So that's why. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Bundy.
Oh, well, you can dress one of those guys that they pull out of the stands there. And put them on the
Yes.
Goalie. What about the veteran netminder that Chuck Fletcher hired signed in the offseason to back up Carter Hart? No. Okay.
Yeah. No. Not going to happen. Okay. But the point is that
you're talking about the kid in Siberia.
I forgot. I don't even remember his name. That's how
the Siberia. He's in Siberia now. Yeah.
No, not Fedotov. No, not him.
No. That's Fedotov. Now that actually is another interesting thing too, and we obviously hope that all's well with Fedotov. I don't think it was ever actually confirmed if he had re-signed in the KHL. That was like a thing going for a little bit, that like he might try to re-sign in hopes that it would get him out of the military deployment. If he didn't, and his contract is up with CSKA Moscow, it would be interesting to see in a year or two if he does come stateside. All of a sudden, then you have yet another potential.
Do the Flyers have a pipeline of goalies right now? Is that what we're looking at, Anthony? Is there a chance the Flyers may be a goalie pipeline?
A goalie factory.
So
Chuck Fletcher, unbeknownst to us,
the other goalies,
Roseman, he is to quarterback. Whatever, you get it. Howie Roseman, quarterback factory. Chuck Fletcher, goalie factory. Who knew?
The other goalies who have played for the Phantoms this year, besides Ersson, Pat Nagel, Troy Grosnick, who was the guy that Russ was referring to that signed in the offseason, and Nolan Meyer. So yes, there is no depth.
Single entity?
There's no depth behind. So that's why they want to keep Sandstrom. And I'll tell you, so he goes down, he's going to be down there for 2 weeks, right, on a conditioning assignment, which buys the Flyers 2 weeks, okay? After that 2 weeks, they got to make a decision. What are they going to do? They got to bring him back, or are going to put him through? What are you going to do? I'm pretty confident that they're just going to bring him back and carry 3 goalies. I'm pretty certain that that's what they're going to do. And they're just going to have to – they have the cap space because of all the guys that are on LTIR, right? So they have the room to do it. They're just going to suck it up and carry 3 goalies for 3 months because they can't afford to not have Felix Sandstrom at this point. But they convinced him that they want him. They have him as part of their plan in some capacity, whether it is as a backup next year or as the third goalie for the rest of this year, whatever the case might be. But Sandstrom's on board with it, and they don't want to waive him. They know that he'll get claimed, and they don't want to lose him for nothing, right? So yeah, it's a good problem to have when you have 3 goalies. But Ersson's going to get a chance. He's going to get a chance here. Be curious to see how that all plays out as you look ahead for 23-24.
Well, there is a cloud that's looming, and I guess Bundy, maybe I could throw this to you. There is the cloud out there. There's the uncertain nature of what the Hockey Canada investigation is going to find. Now, to recap this really quickly for those who might have forgotten or might not have been in the know, Carter Hart was part of the Hockey Canada team.
2018
was not named publicly, was not named in charges or anything, but was with the team the weekend that there was a sexual assault. And he did not release a statement a few months ago when some of the details came to light, when it was announced that the investigation was being reopened or added on.
Have other names been mentioned, Russ? Before we say it, or anyone else? I'm just trying to understand if other guys were and he wasn't.
No, so no official names have come out. I mean, there's been a lot of inferences, and we're not going to make any inferences.
Right. I didn't know. That's why I'm asking you.
No, but there are some like legit NHL names that were on the 2018 team.
And 2003.
Well, there was the 2003 one is a whole separate.
That's a different,
whole separate investigation. Yeah. Yes. But the 2018 team, which included Carter Hart, also included, for example, Cale Makar was on that team.
Right.
And Jordan Kyrou was on that team. And Cal Foote was on that team. So there's some players that, have established themselves as legit NHL players who were part of that team. And no one has been named. There have been no charges, but there are 3 concurrent investigations, one by the NHL, one by Hockey Canada, and one by the police, or as they like to say up in Canada, the Crown is investigating, and they're diving into it. And until that initial police investigation is concluded, nothing is going to come out about anybody. I mean, the NHL or Hockey Canada, they're not going to release their findings.
The Hockey Canada stuff is on. I mean, I've been represented Hockey Canada multiple times over the years. To have read what I've read through a lot of the great sourcing that's been on Twitter from whether it's Ian Kennedy or some of the other people. I mean, it's pathetic what they did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just completely pathetic. And it actually makes me shameful that I was even part of it at times. So they got a lot of work ahead of them, but go ahead, Anthony. I mean, it's an interesting story. It's only in development still.
Yeah.
The thing that was interesting about it, and we talked about this a few months ago, but some of those players, some of the guys who were on that team put out their own public statement, independent of an attorney, independent of an agency, independent of anything, went on to social media. Now, this is not to say that going on to social media and declaring your innocence publicly is the be all end all, or is something that is a necessity, right? But there were a number of players who did. There were a number of players who said, I was not there, etc. Carter Hart was not one of them. He was part of a group that is represented by a legal team, who the legal team put out a statement that said that none of their clients had been charged with any wrongdoing, which is not necessarily the same thing as declaring one's innocence outright, and almost in a sense allows for gray area and perhaps for some people to say, well, what the hell does that exactly mean? Either you were there or you weren't. We're not diving into this whole thing, but just to give people an idea, that investigation's out there, and it's not as if it's a small thing. It's not as if it's a back of mind thing or out of sight, out of mind. It is a very real thing in the league. So much so that there have been murmurs, and this even goes back to at least one of our friends from the show in the past who've kind of gone back and forth with our dear friend Ant and RD, where there have been some murmurs league-wide that players who could potentially be in any way named or in any way have anything to do with or to have not already been cleared that there could be difficulty in moving a player like that, even if they were innocent, because until a ruling has been put out formally by the police and then by the league and by Hockey Canada, that a lot of these players are kind of off limits. No team is going to want to trade assets on the off chance or whatever chance that you acquire a player and then they end up being named or they end up being charged. There's a legitimate concern out there. So in a sense, I mean, Carter Hart is untradeable.
Right now.
Right now in league circles, it's believed he's untradeable because of this uncertainty around the whole situation, which is why perhaps it's not only beneficial that Ersson has stepped up, but perhaps Sandstrom looks at it and says, there could be a shot here. You know, whether he gets, if Hart gets cleared and the team decides they want to move on, there you go. Get a bountiful return in terms of prospects and whatever else you're really trying to, jumpstart, kickstart a full-on rebuild here. You could do that. If something, God forbid, were to happen where he's part of it and is essentially out of the league, there's another opportunity. There are so many different things at play here. And I don't know where you're at on it.
Take a look at the Boston Bruins, what they went through this year with that signing.
Yeah.
Right. Just from a bad optic standpoint. Right. So the bar's already been set, and I'll let you jump on it, Anthony. But to me, that's all I could remember this year of the Boston Bruins, beyond the great start they had and the amazing season, was that signing of that kid and the amount of pushback that they had gotten both from the media and the fan base throughout North America and the world.
Yeah,
for that signing. So I can only imagine if the names are named, what these people are going to end up dealing with, the organizations.
Yeah, Mitchell Miller is who's Bundy's referring to there, who bullied a kid when he was younger, pretty badly too. The only thing I will say on this, and again, we have to be. I want to reiterate what Russ has said. There is no accusation here. We know nothing. We know nothing. We don't know who's involved, who was involved. So we're not going to even try and speculate. Other than to say this would be the only level of speculation that I think I could honestly say. If it came out that any of these players that are in the NHL or still in the minors, if they're still in the minor leagues, were involved in any way, and when I say in any way, I mean if they knew about it and said nothing, in today's culture, in today's society, people are going to ask that they be let go. People are going to call for their head. They're going to try and cancel them, right? I mean, it's really going to happen. So it doesn't just have to be, you don't have to have been one of the actual perpetrators and can still, be put into a situation where it's an untenable one for you to stay employed with your current hockey team. That's how bad the situation is. Again, there's a lot that would have to come out. A lot has to be tied into it. They would have to. I think that they might have to be found guilty too, because there's some people who believe that it was consensual. Some people who believe that it wasn't. There's a lot of things going on with that story. So you really can't say anything specific. But it wouldn't be a bad idea for teams, including the Flyers in this instance, because they have a player that could be involved, to plan for the what if. It may never come to fruition. There may never be a what if, but what if it happens, and to have a plan in place. And if that means that's what you say to Felix Sandstrom, if this happens, we need you. I don't think that's a bad thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if every team that has a player tied to that situation is doing the same exact thing with whatever player's position is. And that's just due diligence. That's not thinking that they're guilty or anything along those lines. It's completely due diligence. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Flyers are doing that in this case.
Let's turn the page here to something a little bit more positive now. Now that we got that out of the way, but it's important. The Flyers have a representative in the All-Star game. The way that this process works is every team gets an all-star representative. It's like
Travis Konecny.
Everybody plays. Travis Konecny, friend of the show, not the representative for the Philadelphia Flyers, despite having a sensational season, on track to have his best season of his career. 5 goals away from setting a career high. On pace for, what was it, 46 goals?
And 46 assists. On pace for 92 points. 46 and 46.
Which is the first time since, was it 2008? 2013 or something?
0809, Jeff Carter, 46.
Yeah. And that would be the most points, or the first player to break 90 points since Claude Giroux 5-6 years ago, at least, right?
17, 18, yep.
So here we are in a situation where Konecny's having the season of his life. He was injured at one point, which might have actually adversely, obviously, affected his point production, but seemed to be the guy that should have been the all-star representative, which is not to take anything away from Kevin Hayes. Bundy, you went on Twitter. You said, congratulations to Kevin Hayes. It's great. And there obviously has been a lot that he's had to kind of go through the last year to fight through to bounce back from in the past year. But where do you fall on this? Because Hayes was on a point per game pace and all that. But man, Konecny really seems to have bought in and really felt like it probably should have been his time.
You know what? Listen, I meant that. Like, congrats to Kevin Hayes. It's a nice honor and everything. But the guy for me that's made the difference night in and night out, but more consistent has been Travis Hayes. Taken much by Torts earlier in the year when he sat him and still came back. I know Hayes did as well, but they've been the two guys that were either going to be the guys that you're going to ride or die with, which they have been. They're not first line players, but they're having, both guys are having great seasons. They're first line guys in terms of what their makeup is with this team. But Konecny's a guy that should have been the pulled. And if you wanted to make Kevin Hayes the guy afterwards, I don't know if they're doing popularity contests or let's do it in order of kindness and niceness and everything. And he's running out of years, so let's put him in now and Konecny will make it another year. I don't know how it goes, guys. I don't want to speculate it. I'm just guessing, not making light of it, but Kevin Hayes has done some good things, and I know he's been not thrilled being here under the way Torts has gone with Torts. But Konecny's a younger guy, and I think if you're the Flyers, you probably wanted it to be Konecny anyway, because that can help a guy, right? When you're an all-star, you just don't know, what level you're going to go to next. And I think that they were looking forward to having that. Maybe he's still, if there's an extra vote or however they're going to do this, but Konecny, to me, guys, was the only all-star on this team, and they got it wrong. I don't have anything else to say. I don't know how the picks were done, who did them. I suggest you watch more Flyer hockey and get your head out of your ass and stop making so many fucking dumb picks when it comes to stuff like this. Ask people that actually watch their teams instead of being some idiot that's sitting there going, hey, we're going to do it for Kevin Hayes instead of Konecny because you know what? Like, it's his turn. Get lost. Put the right guy in.
So it's NHL hockey operations, which I didn't even know was a thing. I'll be honest with you. That's what I said. Like, I've been covering this sport for 23 years and didn't know NHL hockey operations existed. Like, I really didn't. I had no idea I didn't know what that means. Like, I know each team has a hockey operations department. I didn't know the league had a hockey operations department. Like, you're supposed to manage the what? Like, are you picking your all-star team? Is that your only job? And then they screw it up. But that's who picks it.
Yeah.
Right. So here's the thing. I don't think you're wrong, Bundy. I think that they look at this as more of a marketing approach for the team, for the league, than they do as an actual reward. And they want the stories that are going to be the better stories that they could promote that whole weekend. And, after everything Kevin went through last year with his brother dying and being, coming back from the two surgeries, and, scoring for his brother and all that stuff. And then this year, the whole thing. And remember, when Torts benched him, when he was the leading scorer of the team, he's now second behind Konecny. But when he was leading scorer and was a healthy scratch, the league, like all of the talking heads for the league, went nuts. Like, we've never seen this before. What the hell's Torts doing? Blah blah blah. So it's almost like it's an FU to Torts. Back at him, say, okay, we're going to pick this guy to be the all-star. Konecny's been an all-star before, so it's not like he's never been an all-star before. And There is a chance for fans to vote in 3 more players for the Metropolitan Division team. Konecny probably would have had a better chance. Probably has a better chance of getting voted than Hayes would have. So I think that they look at it and say, we'll take if we want the Hayes story, we do that, and then Konecny, maybe he gets in if the fans vote him in. It's the same thing.
Did anybody get his? Yeah, go ahead, finish.
I was going to say, like, for an example, in Edmonton, Connor McDavid got the pick. Okay, fine, but Leon Draisaitl was not picked because they only picked one guy per every team. Well, Draisaitl certainly deserves to be an all-star, so they just assume he's going to be the one the fans will vote him in, no question. So maybe they looked at it and said, look around the Metro, who else in this division, is deserving? Maybe Konecny will maybe the fans will realize it and vote Konecny in anyway.
Did anybody else get stiffed like Konecny? Did somebody like a worse player or lesser player make it and then another player got left behind like Konecny? No, to me, when I look at it, he got totally stiffed by the hockey ops of the NHL.
Pasternak isn't there, and he's the best player on the best team in hockey. They picked the goalie, right, in Boston, I believe. I mean, it's kind of hard to say. Braden Point didn't get picked, but they picked Kucherov.
That's different. I mean, that's a team that's got a couple Stanley Cups, right? Like, I mean, nobody cares if they go because they've already got their rings. But this is one where it's like, to me, if you ask the fan base, I mean, it's not even up for discussion. It's been Konechny's been the guy all year. Yeah, he has, and he's also he's improved his game.
How about Montreal? They picked Nick Suzuki instead of Cole Caulfield.
Yeah, that's bad. That's another example of it. That's a good example. So Caulfield should be in too, but they're not going to take 2. So here's the problem, guys. They're not going to take 2 guys from really crappy teams. So it's unlikely it's going to be Caulfield and Konecny who are going to be the 2 guys because they're both on dog teams, right? Like at the bottom of the standings.
Right.
So they're going to end up picking somebody who, like as you said, Anthony, with your financial model or your selling model, they'll probably pick Braden Point or for sure Leon Draisaitl in Edmonton. So I think the Flyers, they get 1 and 1 only unless you put it to a fan vote. And if Philly's involved, Konecny will probably get in.
Now, Bundy has already shown more concern about this topic than a guy who benched Kevin Hayes and a guy who clearly has gotten through to Travis Konecny, and that, of course, is John Tortorella. So after Thursday night's game, John Tortorella was asked this, and he was asked about Travis Konecny being snubbed for the All-Star team. And so, let's just let Torts weigh in here.
It's a tough league to win in no matter who you play. So we're certainly not going to go in the back door and say that because he's against weaker opponents. I think our game has grown as a team.
Here comes the question.
Been arguably your most consistent player all year long. Are you disappointed that he didn't make the All-Star team tonight? They announced.
I don't even worry about that shit. The way the whole game, the whole weekend, I don't even watch it. I think it's turned into well, I'll just leave it at that. I really don't care.
Do you think that he's deserving?
I really don't care. Talk about All-Star stuff, okay?
I hadn't seen it. Let me just make it my comment. That is fucking awesome. That is the best thing I've heard in 2023. That is the best.
I love the fact. I don't even watch it. I really don't care. That shit doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I don't really care.
What do you think the NHL's thinking when they're like, Jesus, man, one of our prominent coaches just took a leak all over the All-Star events.
It's fantastic. I know Russ doesn't like it. Russ thinks it's unfair to Konecny. Like he could have at least answered and said, Konechny's deserving. But the fact is he just shit all over the All-Star, the whole concept of the All-Star game.
Absolutely. It's almost like they should cancel if they're him. Like, John, anything else you do with the All-Star game that would help? Yeah, I would cancel it tomorrow if I could.
Just give us the week off and we'll be back. Yeah.
The only thing about it that I wasn't thrilled with, because initially I laughed because Crossing Broad had set the odds in the very beginning of the year about like which reporter is Tortorella going to like kill first. And Carchidi was like on the board. I don't know how he was. He was the odds-on favorite. The only thing I don't like about it is I feel like as a coach in that situation, there is a way to express that you hate the All-Star game and think it's garbage, but also defend your player at the same time. Like, I think that what Tortorella could have said is, I don't really care about the All-Star game. I think it's a terrible, like, I think the event is like not what it used to be, all that. That said, Travis has done everything we've asked of him. He has totally bought into the system, you know, yada, yada, yada. And any year, his effort and what he's produced is All-Star caliber. And then you leave it at that. And I think that that's like the way that you kind of internally, you boost your player. And at the same time, externally to the public, you're like, this really is a joke. I feel like the old pundit in him, the talking head version of Tortorella came out there a little bit more. And maybe it's just like one of those things where you're going, that's it. It was funny.
Oh, classic.
It made my job much easier.
Oh,
it did.
Dude, that's
writing all about that, right?
But as opposed to 1,800 words to get to that point, Ed. So, you and your long ass posts. All right. Before we head out, we had some 5-star reviews.
Woohoo!
We want to get to. WBON22 says more minutes for Bundy. Always informative, never afraid to take a stand, and always entertaining.
Thanks, guys.
I wonder how many of your coaches said more minutes for Bundy.
Every single one of them, except for power play. When they saw me on the power, someone saw me in the power play for 3 seconds at the end. They're like, get him the fuck off the power play.
If you had to guess, Bundy, real quick, if you had to guess in your career, how many minutes do you think you played on the power play?
You know, my first couple of years,
I don't know the answer.
A little bit, maybe 50 in my career.
Okay.
You know, I think that might be fair. Maybe 40. But, if you're not getting power play time, you're not getting points, especially in the league today. So, but no, I did not play power play, and thank God I didn't. You know, the best part I told the kid yesterday before we go to the next 5-star, I said, you know, the best part about my career, nobody asked me to score a goal one single time. And if you can do that for 900 games, you're a winner.
I have one last question about this. Were you ever the last guy on the team to register a point or score a goal, or no?
I
know that's a thing. I know that's a thing in the locker room.
I won 104 games without scoring, and I went end to end in Tampa and shot the puck empty net. And we won it. And it was like a minute left, and it could have been icing. And Clark comes by me in the locker room after. He goes, "You're fucking lucky that one in." and then after I scored, I dove into my bench. in Tampa. So yeah, anyway, I know I wasn't the last player to ever score. There was there was always somebody who was a little worse offensively. I wasn't bad offensively. I just didn't play power play. If you're not in the power play, you're not getting points. You know, everybody in that league is okay offensively at a power play at what level, but when you get to the top level, it's only made for a handful of guys.
Yeah, I mean, you did put up 159 points in your career. It's not like you were nothing, right? I mean, so that's pretty good.
I'm gonna work really hard.
We're even strength. Yeah.
There's got to be a stat somewhere for your career of how much power play time you had.
He has 10. I looked at it. He had you actually had 8 power play goals and 10 power play assists in your career. But none after 2000, 2001.
How many shorthanded goals did he have? I have that number.
2.
I think I had 1 or 2.
You 2.
Same season.
2. And 6 shorthanded assists. So there you go. All right. That was 1. So they're taking 23, 5-star review. My favorite podcast. 6 stars for Anthony and Bundy, 3 stars for Russ, 5-star average for mathematically challenged.
It's good.
Always a great show. Not the usual sycophants like other pods. Anthony has incredible sources and insight. Chris brings the unique perspective of a player and broadcaster. Russ keeps the show going as a typical Philly fan. I don't know how I feel about that. However, Russ needs to stop beating dead horses. Seriously, Russ, you've beaten the Chuck Fletcher and Kevin Hayes dead horse more than a 30-day-old roadkill on the Schuylkill Expressway. Your Twitter demons are a bit much. Keep up the great work. For the next episode. P.S. Sheets, Russ? Really? That's why I got 3 stars. Has nothing to do with the fact that I've been right for 18 months about Chuck Fletcher. Has nothing to do with any of it. It's because
The Sheets.
And once again, last time, Sheets and Wawa both have good things. Both do different things well. That's it. Okay. Okay.
I can't believe you got a 3-star.
Yeah, right. This Flyers season hasn't been very entertaining, but Ant, Russ, and Bundy's insight is holding my interest during a dismal period in team history. I thoroughly enjoy their educated but casual banter. It reminds me that there was once a time that I could discuss hockey with people who actually knew the sport and cared enough to talk about it. I'm not very confident that Flyers ownership prioritizes winning anymore, but at least Ant, Russ, and Chris and I still care. That was nice by Buds, too.
That's a good one.
That's
I like
good.
that.
Very nice. Great stuff.
Last one, Dilly_Dilly. 5-star pod for a 1-star team. I'll admit, when I first saw this, I was like, oh my God, they said that 3 of us are a 1-star team. That hurt. But no, I've been meaning to leave a 5-er for you fellas, but I can't leave reviews on Google Podcasts or Spotify. So I had to borrow the wifey's iPhone. Love the pod. Flyers fan living in New York City. So I definitely get my Flyers fix here. Keep up the great work. Would love to see more interviews of current Flyers, insiders, Flyers, alumni, etc. The trio is really finding their groove. Similar to Michael K. show, whereas Russ talks way too much. That's a compliment, Russ. Keep it up. And thank you. Keep it going and thank you.
Good stuff.
Well, I would
Good
take
stuff.
Michael K's job.
Great stuff. Great reviews.
Yeah, like ESPN radio in New York City. That's fine. Like, that's a good job. Although he's currently like maybe leaving. I saw it on Elite Sports New York.
Yeah.
Of our friendly sites. So anyway, I think it's probably a good place to end this week. Guys, a lot of positivity on this podcast. If there's one thing that people have to say after this episode, we have started off 2023 with a lot of positivity. Hashtag Posidelphia. So, Ant, anything else before we head out?
No, wrap it up, Russ. I got to go.
Bundy,
Bundy's
anything
gotta go.
else from you on our way out?
Nope. Just had again great night last night. Looking forward to being back down at the building a little bit more too, and it was good. I was really encouraged by a lot of the good stuff and a lot of positivity right now. And you know what? It lets me know we don't have to be, have to beat the horse, the drum on negative things. And you know what? Flyers are doing a good job winning games. Some people don't want them to win, but you know what? It's a lot easier and more fun winning games doing what we do than they do when they lose. So, a lot of positive things, and I'm trying to get that message across too.
Probably some losses to come this season. So let's
no
enjoy.
doubt.
Let's
No
enjoy
doubt.
the feeling of winning and the team playing the right way while we can. So, for Bundy on Twitter at CTarian6, I'm Russ at Joy on Broad. That's Anthony at AntSandPhilly on Twitter. You can find the show on Twitter at Snow the Goalie, Instagram at Snow the Goalie, Facebook.com/Snow the Goalie. You can go to snowthegoalie.com where you can find all of these links. You can find the video, which is also on the Crossing Broad YouTube channel. You find the podcast anywhere you get them: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music. I think it's on Pandora. I don't know. Probably. I don't know who listens to podcasts on Pandora, whatever. It's everywhere that you want to get your podcasts. Snow the Goalie. And remember, as we've been asking every week, tell 2 other people in your life who are Flyers fans about Snow the Goalie. By the way, I totally forgot to mention this. And guys, I don't think I have the tweet pulled up fast enough to be able to show it on screen. I'll remember to do it this week.
We've got to do it next week. The guy with the T-shirt you're talking about?
Yes, we had somebody who tweeted at us earlier this week. I feel terrible that I don't have it pulled up, so I'm going to owe the guy 5 apologies next week. But we had a listener to the show. I think it was like an off, whatever comment that I made like a week or 2 ago about we need to start the merch or something like that. And there is a Snow the Goalie listener. It's Anthony Rocco. I just found it, just pulled it up. Anthony Rocco went, there is no Snow the Goalie merch store right now. But Anthony Rocco went and on his own accord went out and he made himself or got printed for himself a Snow the Goalie shirt. So Anthony Rocco, that makes you, I think, this week's #1 fan of Snow the Goalie. So it's a great looking shirt. Might have to go into getting some merch done, guys. I mean,
ask me more about that. John Leclerc sent me that picture.
Say that again?
John Leclerc had a picture of that and sent it to me, which tells me John Leclerc is a very quiet, secret listener of Snow the Goalie.
That's right. That's a great place to end this week. Thank you
awesome.
to everybody who listened. Thank you to everybody who watched. We will talk to you next week here on Snow the Goalie.